Okay, so now for the fun part. Let's start building our scene. I'm going to start with the moon, so I'm going to go into File and hit Place Linked and bring in the full moon graphic that I have. Okay, so I have that. Now, I want to decrease the size a little bit. I also want to make sure that this guy is on a rasterized layer, and to do that I will go into my, as you see there's this little chain link, and this won't allow me to manipulate this layer. So what I want to do is turn it into a rasterized file, which will allow me to create any type of graphics that I want on this moon, such as coloring, such as different types of hue and saturation methods and modes. So I just want to make sure I get rid of this little chain link icon. So to do that, I'm going to click and hit Control, and I'll have a drop-down menu. And here it's going to say Rasterize Layer. And now my layer is rasterized without that chain link icon. Okay? So I want to unlock the background, and I want to start creating the scene. So I want to build something with a gradient. So I will go into my gradient palette right here. It's under the eraser tool in my case. So I'm going to go gradient tool. And I would like to create something that is radial, not linear. So as you can see in the icons here, I know this being a linear gradient just by clicking over it, and this is the radial one. So you'll actually see a more circular type of gradient go from circle, a lighter circle to a darker circle to an even more darker circle. So I'll show you how this works. I'm just going to basically click and drag like so. But I want to make sure I'm in the center, so maybe create something like this. You obviously want to create something that's a little bit more, it's a little bit bigger than that. So we'll take the size of the moon and go like that. And that's just an idea of how you can recreate something like this. But let's say we want to do something more along the lines of it being on the center. So this is one way too, where you can actually go that way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with my modes over here and go into gradient. And here I can really fine-tune what kind of gradient I would like. So I'm going to go into the radial, and then I'm also going to change the color like so. And then I'm going to customize my gradient. So to do that, in here I will change the color of this halo-like effect. So let's say I want to do something like maybe like a dark orange. And then eventually I'm going to change the color of the moon as well, and I'll show you how that's done. Like that, and then the rest of my gradient, so I'm going into the darker part of my gradient, and I'm going to click on the color picker and say, go something more in the blues, but not too blue, but still dark. And I still think that I can adjust this color a slight bit, maybe make it a bit more red, because I am going to do a blood moon, so I might want to have a bit of a effect there. We'll see. It might be better. Yeah, I like that. So that works. So this is my first step. Now what I want to do is change the color of the moon. So as you can see, what I did here was I created a layer on top of the gradient, and I just manipulated the gradient by adding a fill. And I want to make sure this is clipped to this layer right here. So I'm going to call this radial gradient. Now what I want to do is play with the moon a little bit, and again I will go into this little icon over here, which will change the different modes. So you can change the vibrancy, the hue and saturation, the color balance if you want to do this in black and white. But it basically adds a layer on top of your layer that will change just what this particular image looks like. So I'm going to go into hue and saturation, and I want to make sure that this is a layer that is clipped to my moon. So I'm holding down Option. This is how I unclip, and this is how I clip to this particular part of the layer. So double click here, and this is where I can start manipulating the color. So I want to select Colorize, and as you can see, it automatically changes the color. And you can scale up or scale down according to the hue that you want. And then you can also up the saturation level like so. Okay. And then what you can also do is you can darken or lighten like so. So let's say I want blood moon type. So I'll just shift some of those colors accordingly. And I do want some brightness. So this might work like this, or I might want to slide down and give it a little bit more of a yellower hue. Okay? So now I'm done with my moon. Now let's start to bring in some more assets. So let's bring in the haunted house. So I will go and place and select the haunted house like so. Now notice that it actually went into the same layer where this this effect was clipped onto the moon, and that's fine if you want that sepia tone effect, but I don't want that. I actually want to manipulate this haunted house in a different color mode. So I'm going to just click and drag that on top of this clipped area right here. I want to make sure that this is just clipped to the moon and nothing else, like this gradient here. So this only does the moon layer, nothing else. If I don't clip, the whole thing is pretty much this hue and saturation color, which is what I don't want. So I want to make sure that this is clipped. Alright, so let's bring in our haunted house, which we have over here. We're going to bring this down like so. And like I said, I'm only taking in those little outhouses over here and the mansion right here. So I'm going to use the pen tool right here. And what I want to do is just cut out certain areas of this particular scene, like so. And I'm holding down the Shift key if I want to make sure I draw a straight line horizontally or vertically. And just follow along the silhouette, like so. And you can curve just like you do in Illustrator, the pen tool. This is similar. And what this is going to allow me to do is just have a cleaner cut. I don't need to use the eraser tool to erase everything out because that'll take so long just because of the foliage and the branches and the trees. So I'm just creating a cutout like so using the pen tool. And the pen tool is great because you have a lot of control with the pen tool, and it allows you that certain level of accuracy in your cutouts that you don't really tend to get in a lot of tools. So the pen tool is a very powerful tool to use in your creative toolkit. Okay, you don't have to go into those details if you want, if you don't want to, because again, this is going to be a scene, and the haunted house is going to be seen at a distance, so you don't need to go crazy details and like draw in every one of those little pillars over here. So I'm just roughly doing this like so, and then creating my cutout. And I'll show you how that cutout works. So once I have this all set. Okay. I should be ready to cut this out very soon. I'm going to zoom out just so I can see where I'm at. And I still have one more cottage area to cut out, but this will be pretty quick. I'm not going to go into too much detail right here, so I'm just roughly going over the outline of the house, like so, using straight edges and curves, like so. Okay. So now I have my cutout ready, and I want to complete this cutout like so. Now what I want to do is I'm in my layers palette. If you see this little tab right here that's called paths, it already created a working path for us. So I want to create this into a selection in order for me to delete this background that I don't need. What I'll do is I'll take the path, I will drag this down to the marching ants icon over here, and you start to see the marching ants, and then I'm going to press delete. And it says could not complete your request because it's not editable. So I'll tell you why that happened. And it's good these happened. I have the chain link icon over here. So what I'll do is I will go into my layer, hit Control to hold down and get the menu, and then I will say Rasterize Layer. So now when I go into my Paths tool, I will be able to delete it like so. Okay? So this is the beginning of my scene right now, and I want to make sure parts of it are centered because this is going to be a centered scene. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is what I did with the moon was change the color of this haunted house like so. So I'll go in and select, I'm going to go in and select hue and saturation again. And I want to make sure this is clipped to my haunted house and play around with the color a bit. I want to say colorize first. So here I can go more in the reds or in the blues. I'm going to go more into the blue just because I feel like this is a night scene. And you can go into the reds, that's fine too. That is completely up to your discretion. But I want to make sure I get into an area where I actually am enjoying where the colors are going. So I want to definitely mute down the lightness. This is a dark scene, as we can see, like so. Okay. And sometimes you can go even darker like this and make it even more dramatic. I still want some detail showing in the house, so I'm going to leave it like this and make sure that we are in a blue hue, like that. Okay. Now we're going to do some of the windows. So the windows, I would like to have this orange-like glow to them. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and make a layer, call this Windows. And now I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to use the marching ants over here, so the rectangular marquee tool, and just trace above like so. Make sure you're not in the same layer as the haunted house. You want to make sure you're in the Windows layer, or else, you know, once you start editing this, it's going to be very difficult to go back and erase all that. Because once you hit the paint bucket and you fill, you pretty much don't have this on the same layer. It's pretty much, or it will be on the same layer, and it'll be more difficult for you to edit. So make sure you're working on a different layer right here. So call this new layer Windows. And now I want to go into my paint bucket tool and select that. And I want to color pick something from this background area of the moon and work with that slightly. Change it up a little bit, right? And then see this, the double arrow, this is how we are duplicating. So I'm going to hold down Option to duplicate and drag. And I'm going to do that for the rest of the windows like so. I'm going to do that right here. So anything that has a similar shape, I will recreate. Anything else that has a different shape, like as you can see these round areas, I'm probably going to have to do that in the pen tool, which is fine. I mean, depending on the level of detail you want, you can definitely customize this to your liking. And in here, I'm just going to make sure I have the Command T, which makes this transform tool. Hold down Option. Oops. You're actually going to hold down Shift, like so. Click OK. Make sure the marching ants are still on. You're going to hold down Option, click and drag. Click and drag to the other side. Click and drag. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the windows over here. And then in my next video, you'll see a completed version where I'll have everything already set up, where all the windows will have this orange light to them. Okay?